Hey, good morning, everyone. Joshua Severe Weather. Happy Wednesday to you. Happy 10-4 day, celebrating all those who use CB radio. We're going to have a nationwide emergency message come out at 2:20 p.m. Eastern in the U.S. So be on the lookout for that. Your phone will be buzzing. But we're going to talk tropics here and a growing threat for landfall in Bermuda as well as Maine and Atlantic Canada coming up towards this weekend as Philippe, which has struggled a lot, not just in intensity, but in where he wants to go, is starting to make up his mind now. Looks like he's going to be taking a north turn, moving away from the Caribbean islands and aiming right at Bermuda, and then aiming right at the Bay of Fundy, Maine, New Brunswick, Nova Scotia once again. So here is a look at my latest forecast. And I've kept the intensity off the forecast because I don't want you guys to be deceived. This is a tropical storm which will probably strengthen after it loses its tropical characteristics over the cooler water. And a lot of that is going to be due to its interaction with a strengthening trough that's going to move into the eastern United States. And so by the time it hits Maine, New Brunswick, maybe western Nova Scotia this weekend, it will no longer be tropical. We saw that as well with Lee. However, this one's hitting at a right angle, kind of coming in from the southeast. Lee was coming in from the southwest. So it's going to be more of an impact on Maine than what I think Lee was, and more on New Brunswick as well. A little bit better news coming east of Halifax, Nova Scotia, if this track holds. The other interesting part about this system is it's not nearly as big as Lee, so it's not going to produce the wave action, but it could produce quite a bit of rain up in this area, and as it rotates farther around this trough, could actually produce some snow over portions of Ontario. Of course, at that point, it's not going to be a tropical system, but could produce some pretty strong winds here as it makes landfall. So here is the only system on the map in the Atlantic Basin right now, Philippe. It's been a very challenging forecast. Models several days ago had it turning away in this direction, then they had it coming back to the Caribbean, then they had it coming up in here, and here it's just been a very difficult system to forecast. It never really got too strong, but right now the main threat from it is significant amounts of rainfall. Let's take a look at the wide angle view of the Atlantic. This is the water vapor imagery. It shows you moisture at all levels of the atmosphere. And you can see the Gulf, the Western Caribbean, and the Northwest Atlantic all have quite a bit of dry air in place. A big area of high pressure here over the eastern United States continues to produce above average temperatures. That high is kind of centered right in here, and we're seeing it bring dry air into this region. So protecting the eastern United States from any tropical trouble. Now, here's Philippe, and we also have a boundary with it, a low pressure system and kind of a trough that produces that big tongue of moisture. It gets hung up here over the Bahamas and over the northwestern Caribbean. So that front's kind of in here, and actually that front is kind of bringing a return flow of moisture into Texas. We saw some incredible rain around Brazos Port yesterday. I think about 5 inches fell, and a larger area of low pressure here bringing intense storms to portions of the central U.S. We've seen a lot of severe weather over the last 12 to 24 hours, big time hail, a few tornadoes across this area. And that system is going to move eastward and continue to strengthen as it hits the Great Lakes here by the end of the week and then wraps up here over the Northeast and Atlantic Canada. And that's going to pull Philippe more in this direction. What's going to happen is this area of high pressure here is going to intensify over this portion of the North Atlantic, and low pressure here is going to intensify. It's going to come in and get trapped by the high and bring more of a southeasterly steering flow. So Philippe, instead of being able to escape this way, is going to run into the big high over this region here, and will track more in this direction, getting wrapped around our trough. So where the angle of it coming in to attack is still a bit uncertain, but more models are trending in this direction towards Maine. Fewer models are showing eastern Nova Scotia. I don't think it's a problem here for the New York City tri-state area. I don't think it's going to get back that far west, but because Philippe is going to come back in this direction and this front's going to slow down as it moves east, we're going to see kind of a double-barreled system with a lot of moisture coming in this direction and then Philippe coming in on the eastern side. So two areas of very heavy rain expected here as we get later into the weekend, one in eastern and northern New England, the other across western New England and the Northeast. And the last thing you guys want to hear in the Northeast is that we've got a big rainstorm coming after how wet it's been this summer and fall. But unfortunately, I do think that's going to be a challenge that we have to be contending with here this weekend. Now, the good news is that the rest of the Atlantic is pretty quiet. We've got a couple of disturbances to keep an eye on. Neither looks like they would try to develop. You can see this big area of low pressure aloft here, sending down this dry air behind it. That is going to kill off any kind of thunderstorm activity in the eastern Atlantic. That's not unusual to see now that we're getting deeper into October. In the Pacific side, that's where I think things are going to be more active. We've got an area to keep an eye on here, and then we've got Tropical Storm Lydia here. And I'm going to move over to that basin towards the end of this video to show you more detail. Here's the infrared view. Gulf of Mexico quiet, most of the Caribbean quiet. We have a flare up over parts of Colombia, nothing organized. You can see Philippe here bringing very heavy rain to eastern Puerto Rico, the U.S. and the British Virgin Islands, and still the northern Leeward Islands. And then you can see our boundary over eastern Cuba and the central and southeastern Bahamas producing some locally heavy storms. But overall, aside from Philippe, no major threats at this point. Here's the infrared over the western Atlantic, and you can see our flare up here of storms over the Bahamas, not likely to intensify into anything or develop into anything tropically at this point. You can actually see, kind of neat here, seeing the Atlantic shelf between the warmer waters and the colder waters here on the infrared here, but very quiet across the northern Atlantic for the time being. In the central Atlantic, here's Philippe, and beginning to organize a little bit better. Yesterday, there was a huge struggle in finding the low pressure center with it. It kind of dropped away from the actual convection. Today, it's starting to become a little healthier again as wind shear is still ongoing here. You can kind of see these southwesterly winds coming around and blowing the tops of the storms eastward, which is a good thing. That's going to keep Philippe from strengthening too quickly here. I think it will strengthen eventually, but at this point, it's looking less likely to become a hurricane, more likely to stay a tropical storm. Still a big storm with a lot of rain, but not as strong as some of the ones we saw back in August and September. So that is good news. The rest of the central Atlantic, very quiet. You see all this huge area of dry, stable air, just some lower clouds coming in. That's going to probably keep this area here from flaring up into anything that we really need to watch. And we've got another couple of waves coming off of East Africa. Models are trying to show a little bit of development here towards the 15th of October. In my opinion, I think they're going to be jumping the gun on these. We're going to watch it, but I don't think we're going to see anything form anytime soon. Here's Philippe, and you can see thunderstorms are making a comeback, unfortunately, right over eastern Puerto Rico and Vieques, as well as the northwestern Virgin Islands, mainly the U.S. Virgin Islands, but the British ones as well. And we can see on the radar just a huge area of rain right now, primarily staying east of Puerto Rico. But as you get a closer look at this band right here, you'll see it's actually getting ready to drop south and east. And so San Juan and the eastern portion of Puerto Rico and Vieques could see a significant rainfall event here this morning, which I am very much concerned about at this point because flash flooding, I think, will be a potential problem. The area that's seen the most rain recently is the U.S. Virgin Islands right up in here, St. Croix, St. Thomas, those islands, and Vieques right here is the eastern island here of Puerto Rico. And so this area here could see an additional 2 to 4 inches of rain just this morning. This area of rain that we're watching dropping southeast into northeast Puerto Rico, there's some coastal convergence here. We could see additional amounts as well here over a few inches. So rain is really the problem here with Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. Wind, not so much an issue. I don't think we're going to see winds over 35 miles per hour. Here's a look at the official track. It has shifted west and puts Bermuda in the cone here as a potential tropical storm Friday morning to Friday afternoon. The National Hurricane Center mentioned in its 5 a.m. discussion, we will likely have a tropical storm watch issued for Bermuda later today. So if you're on Bermuda, be prepared and start preparing for this system. We've had a lot of threats to Bermuda, nothing that's directly hit the island, but this one very much could still hit directly the island and bring worse conditions than what we saw with Lee, for example, and Idalia. So be preparing for that in Bermuda today. If you are in eastern New England and Atlantic Canada, I'd say tomorrow would be the time to prepare, because even though this system is going to lose its tropical characteristics, it is going to actually grow in size, and wave action will increase, rainfall will increase, especially on the western side here. And while we may not have a named storm hitting, we will still see significant impact. So please don't get caught up with the category or if it's tropical or not. Do know that the storm is going to grow. It's going to be an area where the jet stream off to its west is going to actually enhance the amount of wind that comes with it. And we may be close to hurricane strength by the time this comes in, maybe up to 70 miles per hour as it's crossing near Yarmouth and coming over towards Eastport, Maine. Even though it's not going to have a name with it, I do think we'll have at least a tropical storm watch and warning. Hurricane watch, very small chance, I think. Even though we're not talking about a hurricane, we're talking about an extra tropical or post-tropical storm. It still could get very close to that intensity. Here are the tropical models this morning. Pretty good agreement for the most part. These are actually climatology, so don't get too wrapped up in them. But none of these models showing this escaping to the right and impacting the Cape Breton, Prince Edward Island, or Newfoundland. Everything's turning it back and bringing it up into either Western Nova Scotia, Western New Brunswick, or Eastern Maine at this point. So this is better agreement than we've seen out of this storm, which has been very difficult to track because of its the fact that there's so many players on the field. The ensembles have a better view of things, showing kind of an eastward bend towards Bermuda, maybe just right of Bermuda, and then starting to bend back, heading north-northwest or even due northwest, coming into Maine here. The good news is that the majority of these models show the pressure staying above 980, meaning it probably won't get hurricane strength with it. But there are some that still show it a little bit stronger. So that is still a possibility at this point, even though Philippe has been kind of underwhelming as far as the intensity has gone. It has not gotten as strong as what models have tried to make happen out of this. And right now, the majority of them keep it below hurricane intensity. Pretty much tropical storm right on through the life of it until it makes landfall here by Sunday afternoon and night. Here's a look at the European model. You can see Philippe is going to stay relatively weak, but may go very close to or right over Bermuda here. This timestamp is 5 p.m. on Friday. Then it's going to accelerate northward and interact with another area of low pressure to its west. There's a big trough here in the Great Lakes here. This is Friday night, early Saturday morning. These two low pressure systems are going to kind of pinwheel around each other. Not really a Fujiwara because this won't be tropical. But what's going to happen is we're going to see Philippe get tugged northwest. It's going to move into colder water, but because of these faster winds out of the southwest aloft, it will lose tropical characteristics and actually strengthen and grow. And take a look at this rain shield here Saturday night, moving up towards southwestern Nova Scotia and down eastern Maine, and even up into the Bay of Fundy. That's going to produce some heavier rain rates as it comes in, and the European says it's hitting at a southeast to northwest angle here, right into eastern Maine here Sunday morning around 11 a.m. And behind it, by the way, with the front, significant rain as well over the weekend here across this portion of eastern New York, over Long Island, over Connecticut, western and central Mass, Vermont, and New Hampshire, as well as into the St. Lawrence Valley portion of Quebec. There could be flash flooding out of this area of rain because notice it's not moving very quickly. Everything's taking its time here as this front moves through Saturday, Saturday night, and eventually Sunday. So the front hangs up and Philippe tries to attach itself to it on Sunday morning. And then the colder air wraps in behind it. So we'll have a dry slot coming in Sunday afternoon into this area, bringing temporarily some nice weather. Then it turns colder at night, and you'll see some snow on the map here across Ontario as the upper low moves over and draws colder air down from the poles. And that would be Sunday night into Monday. So it will dry out in Atlantic Canada. It actually should be pretty nice early next week, while New England and the Great Lakes area remains unsettled and will be quite a bit chillier. And as skies clear, we're probably talking about some frost. Here is the predicted amount of snow in centimeters, up to 14 to 16 centimeters here north of Lake Superior. This is not directly from Philippe, but from the storm system that's drawing Philippe northwestward. So yes, it is the time of the year when we have named storms and we have winter weather in the same sentence. But I would not get too caught up in this. A lot of this is going to fall quickly and then diminish by the time we get into Monday and Tuesday of next week. More significantly is going to be our chance for rain here. And you can see numbers starting to climb here. This is Friday night, significant rain moving into western New York, western PA, eastern Ontario, and into Quebec. And maybe a private rainstorm as well over Long Island Sound and Connecticut here, where over an inch of rain is expected. Look at these totals climbing Saturday night, 2 to 3 to maybe 5 inches of rain across the Connecticut River Valley and up into the Hudson Valley as well. Then here comes Philippe, and you'll see significant amounts of rain from Philippe are on the western side of the circulation. So eastern and northern Maine, we could use some rain. I say that kind of with some sarcasm, but 2 to 3 more inches of rain. Some of you are going to pick up more than what you saw with Lee last month. And unfortunately, even higher totals here as everything hangs up over Quebec and over western New England. So yeah, this will be a pretty big rainmaker. We're seeing the heavy rain in the Caribbean now. We're going to see it across Canada and New England for the first part of next week, Sunday, Monday, maybe early on Tuesday. Here's a look at what we're looking at wind-wise. These are projected wind gusts, and you'll see winds picking up on Bermuda over 40 miles per hour by Friday in the morning. And then the strongest winds are going to kind of take this track northwest from just east of Bermuda. And then, so you see the stronger winds here on the eastern side of the circulation of Philippe. And then as Philippe comes up here, they shift to the western side. This is that post-tropical transition. So on the western side, we could see the stronger winds. That includes eastern Maine, it includes New Brunswick and the Gaspé Peninsula of Quebec, even into the other side of Quebec, We could still see some stronger winds east of the center. Halifax, we're looking at 54-mile-per-hour winds. Cape Breton, 40 to 50 mile per hour. Prince Edward Island, though, I don't think we're looking at as strong a wind unless the system makes the turn farther to the right. And then these winds over New Brunswick shift east into PEI. New England's not going to be particularly windy from this system. It'll be more from the trough and the colder air rushing in. But you can see this will be a significant windstorm for many here, and we could have some power outages with it. Looking at Bermuda here, we'll start to see winds picking up Thursday morning. Gusts may get over 35 miles per hour. By Friday morning, 45 to maybe 50 miles per hour if the European is right. If it ends up farther west, we could see these 60, 70 mile per hour winds shifting back to the west. So 100 miles could be the difference here between a full-blown tropical storm and just getting some fringe gusts out of it. Taking a look at Atlantic Canada in kilometers per hour, we'll see up to 80 to 90 kilometers per hour, possibly here across Yarmouth and the southwestern tip of Nova Scotia. 60 to 80 kilometers per hour over the rest of Nova Scotia, over PEI, over much of New Brunswick, and over the Gaspé Peninsula here of Quebec, with the strongest winds coming on Sunday. Here's a look at the rest of the tropics. Busy in the Pacific. I think that's where we're going to see most of our storms over the next month. We have Tropical Storm Lydia. We've got an area that doesn't look like any kind of a threat. And then we've got potentially a threat to Mexico here towards the weekend and early next week, with our next disturbance expected to form into Tropical Storm Max. And the time frame for that's going to be later in the weekend and early next week. This infrared image shows you the circulation of Lydia growing in size, moving away from Mexico for the time being. The next system remains very disorganized, but you can see a very active monsoon trough here south of Mexico. And here's a closer look at Lydia. Not a threat to land at this time. However, GFS model has been hinting that the storm is going to stall as it moves southwest of the Baja Peninsula and strengthen into a hurricane. And at this point, the recent model shows it continuing that way but stalling. The older models show it trying to get returned back to sender here and doing a bunch of loops, and it's very uncertain at this point. However, Max, or I should say potential Max here, has a chance of coming up into the Riviera and sending moisture up into Texas, maybe even forming some weak low pressure in the Bay of Campeche or the northwestern Gulf. I don't think it's fully tropical, but we have to watch the tail end of this front here over the western Gulf for an increase in moisture over Texas and Louisiana. And you're probably saying to yourself, where was that all summer? Well, we are going to see a wet October here in Texas and Louisiana, maybe in parts of Florida. I'm not guaranteeing you guys will see a named system. I don't know if that's going to be a possibility despite the warm waters. I think the wind shear is going to be a lot stronger. The dry air coming down from Canada is going to be a pretty big force to deal with if you're a tropical system, but I do think we're going to see an increase in moisture around the 15th or so. Very uncertain track here with Lydia, and you can see everything takes it west, but then things slow down here, and then we've got a ton of uncertainty. Depending on how much it slows down, it could get pushed back to the northeast due to an approaching trough, which is going to steer it back and break up this ridge of high pressure over Mexico. But there is certainly a chance it escapes south of that trough and becomes a weaker system and doesn't become a threat to Mexico. The European ensembles, again, let me shift that over to Lydia so you guys can see. A very uncertain track here. This is classic Italian pasta here, spaghetti all over the place, but generally speaking, moving northwest, then turning to the left and going west and then stopping somewhere in here. And then there's a possibility of a loop and then a turn back out, or a possibility for a return and then another loop back out. So we're going to be tracking that for you guys next week. Now, the biggest threat of all of them, I'm not really going to sugarcoat it, is Category 4 Typhoon Koinu. Jenny is the Philippine name, and it is on track to make landfall as a very strong typhoon, probably a high-end Category 3, low-end Category 4, in about 6 to 12 hours here in Taiwan. This is going to be a devastating storm, and the storm weakened yesterday to Category 2. It re-strengthened back to a 4 overnight, and will be somewhere in that 3 to 4 zone as it makes landfall here tonight in Taiwan. Weakening as after it does so and becoming still a lower-end typhoon, but still a Category 1 or 2 here. You can see on the latest visible satellite that the storm has grown. It's got a cloud-filled eye, but it is on track for the southern portion of Taiwan. If you're a person that likes to pray, please pray for these folks. This could be very devastating for some of them. The general track takes it west over southern Taiwan, then weakens it and parallels the coast of China, maybe impacting Hong Kong, but weakening into a remnant low by the time it approaches Vietnam at that point. Here's the radar image. You can see a massive eye. Even though it's cloud filled on radar, it is a very well structured storm, and it is on path to make landfall in the southern tip of Taiwan here. I know there are some people storm chasing it, following storm chasers here like James Reynolds, like Josh Morgerman, iCyclone, and I'm sure we're going to see some incredible video coming from them later tonight into the day tomorrow. I hope they're all staying safe because this is a damaging system. Back in the States here, severe weather expected today with very large hail and powerful winds over the Big Sky country of Texas, crossing the Red River and approaching Norman, Oklahoma. There is a chance for some tornadoes as well here over the Permian Basin, up into West Texas, North Texas, and into central Oklahoma. Slight risk for now. I would not be shocked if we saw an enhanced risk maybe around Wichita Falls and to the north of Abilene as we got into this afternoon and evening. There's also a threat, by the way, for some significant flooding in the Metroplex into northeast Texas, southeastern Oklahoma, and the Arklatex here. A lot of rain is expected here, especially tonight. Here's a look at the model forecast for Oklahoma first, and you'll see that we are going to see storms blowing up over the Texas Panhandle and crossing into Oklahoma late this afternoon, bearing down on Oklahoma City and the I-44 corridor between 6 and 8 this evening. Some powerful winds expected, maybe a tornado or two, and certainly some large hail. Things will then shift into eastern Oklahoma later this evening, crossing the Red River later tonight, and a lot of rain is expected and a lot of lightning is expected before it turns cooler and much more comfortable by morning tomorrow. Here's a look at East Texas and North Texas, and it's going to get very active here. We see this area of moisture this morning lifting through the Arklatex. That's not the main event. We're actually going to see more storms moving in from the northwest here this evening. The Fort Worth area should get hit around 11 o'clock to midnight tonight, then Dallas between midnight and 2 a.m. A lot of rain and maybe some urban flooding here overnight tonight, a lot of wind and maybe some hail, and the rain should gradually taper off and push away tomorrow morning. Here's a look at southeast Texas. We've had a lot of rain in the last 24 hours. Unfortunately, the Bend is going to see more of it. Lake Jackson, Brazosport, west side of Houston, Katy, all the way up to Huntsville and College Station. Locally heavy storms expected today. Then we'll see the main front pushing down into this area early in the day tomorrow around this time, moving through College Station, Huntsville around 7 to 8 in the morning, San Antonio and Austin between 6 and 8, and then heading through Houston between 8 and 10 in the morning. I don't think we'll see severe weather out of this, but I would not be shocked to see some heavy rain and significant amounts of lightning during the day tomorrow. Rain totals here, generally speaking, between 1 and 3 inches. You know there'll be more, though, with these slower moving storms. If you just move your mouse over a few of these areas, we can see areas like 5 or 6 inches of rain very easily coming out of this area of storms. And unfortunately, another 6 or 7 inches in Brazosport. We may see a few places southwest of Houston on the Bend here that get a foot of rain in just 2 days. So a very significant amount of rain. The rain is certainly needed in this area. The Ozarks will see heavy rain. Louisiana could see heavy rain. We do need it here. We're in a significant drought here over much of central and east Texas, much of Louisiana and southern Mississippi. After a very stormy spring and early summer, we've had little to no significant rainfall for the second part of summer and early fall. We're going to see some of that, so this drought area should start to shrink. But unfortunately, the areas that don't need as much rain are going to see more. Northeast Texas, Arkansas, up into the Ozarks region. We are going to see a break in the drought here around Houston, at least some improvement. And, sometimes we can get too much of a good thing. So do be on the lookout if you are in this area for heavy rainfall. I appreciate y'all's time. I hope you have a wonderful 10-4 day. Happy Wednesday to you. If you did enjoy my video, please consider subscribing, sharing with your friends. I'm trying to grow my reach over 15,000 followers. Not about me at this point. It's just about helping other people. I think that is my calling. And I give all the glory to God. That's the true reason I'm doing this. It's because I've been gifted the ability to connect with folks like you into your living room, onto your phones, and just do my best to help prepare you for bad weather. I believe God has called me to do that. I personally believe he's called me to share more. That's my Christian faith with you. And I will say from Mark 16, 15, and 16, Jesus commanded to his disciples, and he said unto them, Go ye into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature. He that believeth and is baptized shall be saved, but he that believeth not shall be damned. It's an either-or situation. There's no gray area at this point. Jesus has commanded those of us who are believers in him that we will be saved because we have put on our faith, we have accepted Christ as our Savior, that we will be saved eternally. If you haven't made that decision, he makes it very clear that if you believe not, you will be damned. You're going to hell, basically. I mean, I'm not laughing about it. It's a pretty serious situation, but I think we all get to a point in our life where we just want to, we may fear death, but we may fear the uncertainty that comes with it. Where are we going to go next? And I was at a point in my life when I was about 30 years old where I was going through a lot of difficult. I was just, I lost my job. I was soul searching. What am I going to do next? Am I even really worth it? And thank the Lord that the window opened for me to get around people who are believers, to sit down, to take a look at the Bible, to understand that there was a higher power out there that could do more for me and that could erase my sins and allow me to have many blessings eternally, but here on earth as well, and to bless other people. Because, in my opinion, I found out where that void was. It was that I felt like I was worthless because I was not helping other people. But thank the Lord, I decided to accept Jesus Christ as my Savior. And as a result, the more and more I preach that gospel, that good news to other people, the better I feel. It's not about me, but I do truly believe that helping others can help you. And I think a lot of people who deal with depression feel trapped, and that is a very real thing. I've been there, trust me. But I also feel like it's human nature to want to help other people and uplift other people. And the more we can do that, the better we're going to feel about ourselves. And the more pleasing we're going to be to God. And that does matter. So I pray that you are in a situation where you can see that light at the end of the tunnel. You can feel the blessings. You can feel God's presence. But if you don't believe in God, I am not going to make any kind of judgment upon you, because I was there for 30 years of my life. If you're turning off this video right now because you're upset with the fact that I'm even talking about it, that's fine. But just know that I'm going to be praying for you guys, because I really do believe there's more out there for you. I really do believe that the more we put into divided world that we're in, the more we put into hating one another or disagreeing with one another or just not accepting other people's faith, the more Satan wins. And I just don't want to see that happen. I'm ready for God to be victorious and take back this world. I don't know about you guys, but that's what excites me every morning. It's got me fired up, to be honest with you guys. I've had my coffee and I'm ready to go out there, be a blessing to others, and help you guys really see that Christ is meant for us. I hope you have a great day. God bless you guys. I'm so fired up, man. That's what happens when you're sick for a couple weeks and you start feeling good. You're like, I'm ready to roll here, God. Just take me, go out there and make me the person I'm designed to be. So y'all have a great day. We'll catch you again tomorrow morning, and see you then.